When we think about the American Revolution, we usually think about how the American colonists, guided by General George Washington, defeated Great Britain, which led to the independence of the United States of America. We often don't think about the events that took place over a span of many years and the hardships that many people faced during this revolutionary time. In this video, I will talk about some events that led towards the start of the Revolutionary War, such as the Seven Years' War, the Stamp Act of 1765, the Boston Massacre, and the Boston Tea Party, which occurred on December 16th, 1773. If you enjoy watching this video, I'll make another video in the future displaying and covering the information and events that occurred after the Boston Tea Party. Hope you enjoy! In the year 1754, 4,000 members of the British military arrived in the North American region to claim land for their country. However, the British weren't the only ones claiming land for themselves. The Dutch, Swedish, Spanish, and French countries were also involved in claiming lands for their country. The lands began to fight over claimed land of American colonists and natives living in coastal areas. In the struggle for global ascendancy in the New World, the British and French fought a war that is now referred to as the Seven Years' War, or more commonly known as the French and Indian War. For some brief information about this war, I will leave a linked video that I made about this topic in the description box down below. The video will also be in the iCard in the top right corner of your screen. The outcome of the war was that the British emerged victorious. France no longer had claims to the regions in what is now Canada and the United States. Fast forwarding to 1765, Great Britain continued to travel throughout the encroached colonies and began to realize that occupying large regions of land was really expensive. In order for England to stay and rule in America, they needed sufficient funds to stay. This is why Great Britain decided to tax the colonists for things that were commonly used in the colonies. The British government began to enforce acts on the colonists immediately. For example, the Stamp Act of 1765 provided a direct tax for printed goods like newspapers, pamphlets, and commercial documents. Another act that was imposed was the Revenue Act of 1767, where colonists had to pay a tax on imported goods such as tea, paper, paint, lead, and glass. The residents in the colonies could not be more provoked about the actions of the redcoats. Little did the colonists know that this was just the beginning of their struggles. 4,000 British redcoats arrived in Boston Harbor in the year 1768, led by their general named Captain Prescott. Captain Prescott's motive for coming to Boston was to claim the land for the King of England and to maintain order against American colonists who were silently protesting against the British government's unfair acts. British soldiers were stationed everywhere throughout the island of Boston, including every entrance and exit. This angered many colonists because they were only allowed to import goods from British companies like the East India Company and the British India Company. Over time, colonists began to become restless. After a year or so, colonists started having arguments with British soldiers about why they were in the colonies. Over time, once in a while arguments slowly turned to everyday. On March 5th, 1770, the snow from a storm was still melting. Some young boys were arguing with British soldiers, which slowly escalated. The orders from Captain Prescott was that the British soldiers were not allowed to use their guns because Captain Prescott feared the situation might arise to a full-on war which was not good for trade. This is why British redcoats would not use their muskets to hurt people of the town of Boston. According to historians, a couple more people joined the young boys and began to shout insults at the British soldiers. It is said that the regulars panicked and immediately called some more soldiers, along with Captain Prescott himself. By that time, someone rang a nearby church bell, which got everyone in that area's attention. Many people began pouring out onto the streets to see what was happening. So everyone poured out onto the streets, and Captain Prescott ordered his men to load their muskets, but gave instructions to not specifically fire. As the situation escalated, people in the crowd began to throw ice balls and other painful hard objects at the British soldiers. All this happened so fast that the following information is a huge debate between historians today. I will tell you solely what I think about what happened next. Under my interpretation, from researching various sources, I believe that one of Captain Prescott's men misfired their musket, which ended up killing a man named Crispus Attucks from African and Native American descent, who was a recently freed slave in the island of Boston. All it took was one shot for everything to go downhill. Colonists began to throw sharp objects like ice and rocks at the soldiers, and all the redcoats decided to open fire against all the colonists. The result of all this chaos was that 3 colonists lay dead and 8 colonists lay wounded. This event angered many people across the colonies. The colonists felt that their freedom was in jeopardy after the Boston Massacre incident. This incident reunited colonists and inspired them to fight for independence about Great Britain. Now that the colonists have been inspired to fight for their independence from Great Britain and the Crown, many things have to happen before the war eventually starts. Some of these things include writing the Constitution of the new nation, writing the Bill of Rights of the new nation, and convincing allies to come and fight for the cause. However, there are some important events I would like to cover before those events happen, like the Boston Tea Party in 1773. The Boston Tea Party occurred on December 16, 1773. This event was a huge political protest against the British Parliament, who kept on enforcing taxes on colonists. The British were mostly enforcing all these taxes on the colonists because the British were in a serious load of debt. The British saw the colonists as people who could help them with this problem. The colonists did not want to pay extra taxes to the British government because they were already paying taxes to their own elected representatives. This is why, on this night in December, colonists raided British ships and dumped 342 crates of tea made from the British East India Company into the Boston harbor. Colonists were ready to take the risk of facing consequences from the regulars, such as being beaten or being arrested. Regulars were shocked when they found out that all their imported tea was now in the Boston harbor. This event was the first major confrontation between the British soldiers and the colonists. In a separate video, I'll explain how the colonists prepared for the war against Great Britain. Some of these preparations include uniting all the colonists to prepare for the war with the Redcoats and forming a new constitution for the new nation. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next video.